Hi all! I hope you've had a good week. I'm back to do another reading from Daughters of Fire and Sea. We had chapter 24 last week, and now we're going to do chapter 25 and find out exactly what Lanadara means about being able to summon dragons. So let's just get into it. All right, chapter 25, Lyric. Lyric blinked, her heart skipping. She hadn't expected her wild suggestion to be met with acceptance. Possible? Runa asked sharply. You're not proposing we put our father through the ritual again. No, Lenadara said. There's no need. You and your sister are Again's children. His blood, Sereth's blood, is in your veins. And if that wasn't enough, you're also descended from the three. You are closer to their power, to all their power, than anyone else alive. Would it kill us? Lyric asked. Corrupt us, like our father? The high priestess shook her head. No, as you will be willing participants, it is unlikely another destructive result will occur. Unlikely, but possible, Runa said. We cannot know the exact effect of a ritual thousands of years old, Lenadara said, but I'm confident there's no danger in the summoning itself. This is madness, Eladin said, voice ragged with disbelief. He leaned forward, fixing Runa and Lyric with his eyes. The last time the ritual was attempted, Thenda was destroyed, and the sea poisoned. Your father, my brother, was poisoned. Lyric shifted beneath her uncle's gaze. Was she being foolish? It's not without risk, Lenadara said. How do you know the ritual anyway? Runa asked. Lyric frowned. How did the high priestess know the ritual? If it was forgotten magic, how would both Lenadara and Lyric's grandfather learn the spell and its requirements? Mother shared it with us, Lenadara said. So you already believe the ritual is necessary? Lyric asked. Has the mother tree told you it will work? If the three are awakened, their fire can burn away the taint as it was created by corrupted magic. Would you have asked us to do the ritual if Lyric hadn't suggested it first? Runa asked. Lenadara inclined her head. I would have asked, as we are running out of time. I know Eladin brought you to us because he thought it'd be safer here, away from both Rendishar and the Cyrene. We do wish to be your allies. We cherish life, and their war only brings pain and death. We'd help you for that reason alone, to save the lives of our brothers and sisters, but there's a greater threat now, a threat to all of us. Not just to you and me, but to all people, all life on Aerith. The mother herself is at risk if the taint spreads unabated. Fear loosed in Lyric's mind as she thought about everyone dying. She imagined the plants wilting and the trees back home twisting and melting as unnatural green lines ravished their trunks. She thought about birds dropping from the sky and animals decaying on the ground, their melted corpses spreading the tainted magic. What does the spell do if it works? She asked. What happens if we call the old ones and they answer? Lyric laughed, a breathless, terrified sound. It seemed so ridiculous to be discussing this like it was something that could actually happen. Dragons lived in stories. We'll ask for their assistance, Lenadara said. We'll call on their wisdom and love for Aerith to save her. The old ones are tied to this world. If they didn't care what happened to her, then they would have followed the Trinity and the Seven to the beyond. The three would not have stayed in the Vale. Lyric thought back to the song Kel sang all those days ago on the beach near Thenda. Eyes turned away, the lords wait in shadow, dreaming until called forth again. Though distant and sleeping, they'll return to preserve us. I wonder what Rakarn would have told them if his ritual worked and he'd summoned the dragons, Runa said. Oh, excuse me, great ones. Would you mind destroying my enemies, please? She snorted, an incredulous look on her sharp face. He must have thought he could control them, Eladin said. He exchanged a glance with Laerdy, both men looking ill at ease. Lyric thought about Lenadara's face when she'd recalled the visions she claimed the Mother Tree had shared. She'd looked scared, as if she'd stared into Valen's face, seen her death and the death of everyone she loved. She thought about a man who died in her village from a poison inside his body. By the time they knew what was wrong, saw its effects on his skin, the blood in his eyes, it was too late. I think we should try the ritual, Lyric said, looking at Runa. If there's a chance we can stop the taint, we have to risk it. Lenadar is right. Even if we're able to end the war and mediate peace, none of it will matter if the world rots beneath us. It seems somewhat blasphemous, doesn't it? Runa asked quietly. Compelling the old ones to attend us? Asking them to clean up something we created? Not us, Lyric said. Will that matter? Runa leaned her head close, her voice barely a whisper by Lyric's ear. Why push so hard for this lie? We don't know anyone here, not really. How can we trust that the information we're being given is not a careful manipulation? Mother lied to us, and she loved us. We can't say the same for anyone here. I don't see another option, Lyric said. We can choose to do nothing, but that feels wrong to me. I think she's right, that we're running out of time. Remember Mr. Ilian, who died from blood rot? She chewed on her lip. Maybe we can wait for Mama, ask what she thinks before we decide. I want to see my brother, Elodin said abruptly. Lyric looked up. Linadar was staring at her, her face unreadable. I want to see him too, Lyric said. I want to see what happened. Of course. Linadar inclined her head. I must warn you that Again is not the man he once was. It won't be easy to look upon him. We're discussing performing the same ritual that altered him, Runa said. We will see him. Of course. Linadar stood with a smooth, graceful motion and clasped her hands in front of her. She waited for the others to rise and led them to the door. Kel, Lyric asked as she followed behind the high priestess. Will you tell him where we are? Yes, I'll have him brought to you after you see your father, Linadar said. Worry knotted Lyric's stomach as the memory of Kel's bleeding nose replayed inside her head. He would be fine, wouldn't he? Returning to the forest outside the structure's door, the two guards at the entrance fell into step behind them. Laerdy shifted between walking by Elodin's side and at the back of the group to keep an eye on the guards. As they walked away from the village, Lyric realized that she hadn't felt Gandhara's presence since stepping on Ayanaran soil. Why hadn't her ancestor chimed in during their discussion with the high priestess? Lyric would have asked her about the ritual, or if she had any useful knowledge about the Ayanarans. Gandhara? Lyric asked. She received no answer. This connection would be more useful if Gandhara were available when I need her, Lyric thought. Has Eleanor talked with you since we arrived? She asked Runa in a low voice. She didn't want Lenadar to overhear and ask for an explanation. No, her sister said curtly. Lyric frowned at her, but Runa stared straight ahead. Sighing, she returned her attention to their walk. They climbed a short hill, then trailed down the other side into a valley. Lyric gasped, feeling a sense of awe as they walked between two large moss-covered stones. The valley was long and deep, rock formations towering on either side, visible between the trees. It was quiet, the air warm, and Lyric was grateful she'd left her skirts tied up in mimic of the Sirene's trousers. I'll have to borrow some of Hallie's clothes, Lyric thought, as sweat trickled down her back. Her dress stuck to her skin. A scream rang out. Lyric stopped short, snapping a hand around Runa's wrist. What was that? She asked, staring at the trees. Again, Lenadara said softly. Anxiety lodged like a rock inside Lyric's throat, and she didn't let go of her sister as they climbed another small rise. The path twisted and opened into a clearing. Tall trees grew around its edge, their branches arching over the sky and blocking Lyric's view of the clouds. In the center of the clearing was a pit. Two green-clad women, their hair braided back from their faces, sat near its edge. One was holding a bow, loose but ready, and the other had a knife sheathed at her waist. Another scream split the air, its sound primal and raw, more animal than human. Lyric's skin prickled and her heart shuddered inside her chest. Her stomach filled with dread as the scream weakened into a rasping whimper. You have Again in a pit? Elodin asked furiously. He strode past Lenadar to the pit's edge with Laerdy on his heels. Together they leaned over, looking down. Laerdy recoiled, and Elodin rocked back on his heels as if something had struck him. His hands clenched against his legs, his fists tight enough that Lyric heard his knuckles pop from the strain. It's him? Lyric asked, taking a tentative step forward. No! Elodin whirled around and held up a hand. No, Lyric, this shouldn't be the first glimpse you have of your father. His face was pale, his eyes wild and round. We don't need to be protected, Runa growled. She strode forward, unconsciously towing Lyric along. Drawn to the edge by her sister, Lyric swallowed and looked down into the pit. It wasn't dark like she'd imagined, but softly lit by glowing lights high on the earthen walls. There was a blanket, shredded and soiled in one corner, and an earthen pot tipped on its side that perhaps once held water. In the center of the pit stood a man, head bowed and back hunched. He was naked from the waist up, and his linen trousers were stained and torn. His feet were bare, his toes curled in the gashed dirt. As Lyric stared down at their father, her fingers clenched around Runa's arm, Again's head snapped up. Matted silver hair flew back from his eyes. They were green, like Elodin's and Lyric's own, but they were wild, unfocused, and shone with unnatural light. He was handsome, or had been, the square face drawn, the cheek sunken. A scraggly beard covered his cheeks. Long, bloody lines crossed his chest, as if he tried to scratch away the skin on his abdomen. Again's ribs stuck out visibly, his belly hollowed. Wrapping both his arms from elbow to armpit were 7 tattooed rings of mage blue. There was no recognition in Egaine's stare, and he inhaled, scenting the air like a dog. Fury darkened his eyes to a deep, unsettling green, almost black, and he howled, running towards the wall beneath their feet. Lyric yelped, grabbing Runa, as their father's body slammed into the wall. Egaine scrabbled vainly, trying to climb, to reach them, but he slid back to the pit's bottom with every attempt. Howling again, he stalked back and forth. He watched them, muttering something unintelligible. Tears filled Lyric's eyes, and she looked back at Leonadara. "This is our father?" she asked, voice breaking. She could hear Runa breathing raggedly beside her, and she slipped her arm around her sister's waist. "Can't you do anything for him?" "Nothing we've tried works," Leonadara said. "He's beyond our abilities. However, Runa asked. Her voice was rough and angry. "Don't toy with us," she spat. "Say what you're thinking." The high priestess folded her hands together. "If the taint is burned from the world, it's possible the creatures poisoned by it will be cleansed. Your father's illness is from the taint's corruption. I believe there's a chance he can be saved." "You're manipulating them," Eladin said accusingly. He glowered at Leonadara, causing one of the green-clad guards to step closer to the high priestess. "That's not my intent," Leonadara said. "I don't wish to force you to do anything. I only want you to make an informed decision." "We have to do it," Lyric whispered to Runa. "We have to try. I can't walk away, not now." Egaine screamed, scrambling at the wall of the pit, and both Lyric and Runa jumped. "What else can we do?" Lyric asked. She could not give up on him or leave him here. She would not walk away. Runa gritted her teeth. Her eyes were dark with pain and worry. "I don't know, Lai," she whispered. "It's all falling apart around us." "To the end and beyond?" "Are you with me?" Lyric thought. Runa smiled, a sad, bitter twist of her lips. "To the end," she said. "But I think you're right, and we should wait for Mother. She'll be here soon. Maybe she knows something about the ritual." Lyric nodded, and together they turned back to Leonadara. To the side, Eladin and Laerdy stared at them, their faces strained, caught between worry and anger. "We want to help," Lyric said, "but we need to speak to our mother first. She's on her way." Annoyance flashed across Leonadara's face, the look gone so quickly Lyric wondered if she'd imagined it. "I understand, but you need to make your choice soon. The ritual must be performed within the next 2 days while the veil is thin. The moons are aligned above us, ensuring a successful summoning. We cannot miss it, or we'll be forced to wait another year. By then," she gestured, her eyes sad, "the taint will have consumed Aerith." Lyric gasped, feeling cold. She steadied the high priestess's face, her confidence faltering. "Why didn't you mention this before?" Runa asked, frowning. "I did not want to rush your decision," Leonadara said. "I hoped we would—" "High priestess!" A green-clad woman rushed towards them from the trees, her bow held over one shoulder. Leonadara turned, lips tightening. "Yes, Elwyn, what is it?" "There's an airship approaching from the east with blue sails." "Kaya," Eladin swore, staring up into the sky. Lyric followed his gaze, but saw nothing but branches stretching overhead. "I'll speak to her." Leonadara looked at Lyric and Runa. "I'll tell her you're under our protection. That is, if I may speak on your behalf?" Lyric and Runa glanced at each other. "Yes, thank you," Lyric said. "You can tell Kaya we'll meet with her once she agrees to your terms of conduct." She eyed Runa, who nodded. "We need to speak to the Gale anyway," Runa said, "to discuss the war's cessation." The high priestess opened her mouth, perhaps to press the deadline she'd given them. "We understand the urgency," Lyric said, "and we'll make our decision, but given the gravity of this undertaking, we want to wait for our mother to arrive. We need her counsel. You said we have at least 2 days?" Leonadara inclined her head, the skin tight around her eyes and mouth. "I'll take you somewhere to rest, where you can confer in private. I'll have Kel brought to you, and Kaya, if you wish, once we have officially greeted her." "Thank you," Lyric said. Runa gave a curt nod, glancing back at the pit. "I'll come with you," Eladin said, his eyes on Leonadara. "Kaya can be damnably cunning when she wishes. I'll ensure her compliance." Chapter 26. Runa. Runa paced, her hand trailing sparks along the interlacing branches of the wall. "Careful," Lyric called from across the room. "What if you set fire to the tree?" "I'm not going to set fire to it," Runa said. She murmured the rune for fire again beneath her breath, and felt a surge of satisfaction as the wood scorched beneath her fingers. They were back in the village, in a small pod-like structure that Leonadara's people had furnished with blankets and cushions. The Ayanarans had brought water and food, then left them alone. Eladin and Laerdy had gone with Leonadara, and had yet to return, and Kel was still with the healers. Don't be a child, Eleonora hissed inside her head. You can't ignore me forever. Runa pivoted on her heel and walked the other way, glancing sideways at Lyric, who was picking out a plate of fresh vegetables and dip made from mashed beans and spices. Her sister's eyes kept drifting to the doorway, as though expecting Kel to walk through at any moment. Your sister trusts too easily, Eleonora said. Her voice was sour with displeasure. Runa gritted her teeth and tried to focus on the sensation of the branches beneath her fingers. She'll weaken you. She's holding you back. Did you see how quickly your sister sided with these outlanders over you? She chooses others over blood. Who do you think she'll side with when an agreement is made? Not Rendishar. Go away, Runa thought, rubbing her temples. What do you think the Sareni will do when we're no longer regulating their movements? Do you think they'll forget their supposed claim to our land? No, they are devious. They'll sneak into the scorched court through your sister's tainted blood. Enough, Runa hissed. You forget we're the same. Did you say something? Lyric asked, looking up from the plate in her hands. Nothing. Runa forced herself to walk over to her sister and sit down. Lyric offered her a long yellow pepper spear, and Runa took it, absently ripping off a chunk with her teeth. I still can't wrap my head around this, Lyric said. Can the fate of the world, of life itself, truly hinge on our decision to participate in the ritual? Lenadara could find someone else, Runa said, recalling what the High Priestess had said. I doubt our father's the only godchild in the world. She's likely exaggerating our importance, so we'll agree to help, because she doesn't have the time or desire to find someone else. Maybe, Lyric said, but if it were a simple thing, then why wouldn't she have tried the ritual with someone else? We didn't ask if she has. Runa narrowed her eyes at the pepper. They should have thought to ask her. What if Lenadara had already tried it and failed? Even if the ritual could only be performed a specific time of the year, she'd had 12 years to try. But if she has performed the ritual, Lyric said, and it failed like grandfather's, we would know, wouldn't we? If the effect was the same, Runa said. Maybe she tried and nothing bad happened. Maybe nothing happened at all. If our consent determines whether the ritual works or not, then all Lenadara would need is someone to agree. Maybe. Lyric's voice trailed off. I don't get the sense that Lenadara is hiding anything from us. If she performed the ritual before, she'd have told us. I understand why she didn't mention the deadline right away. Foolish, Eleonora hissed. It should work, shouldn't it? Lyric asked. The only reason grandfather's spell failed was because father fought against it. As long as we don't fight... And if Lenadara is wrong, Runa asked, what if the ritual requires our death? What if that's what father was fighting against? Do you still want to go through with it if the cost is our lives? Lyric's eyes were thoughtful. She was actually considering Runa's question. You'd die to summon the dragons. Runa's cheeks heated. The truth was, she was afraid. But why? She'd almost died once already. She knew how it felt. What was one more brush with death? But this would be agreeing to it beforehand. No accidental spell pushing her out of her body. Was this better or worse? If this is the only way to save Aerith, Lyric said, to save everyone, how can we not? She was tormented, it was clear on her face, but she'd still do it. She'd sacrifice herself. It's not your job to save everyone, Runa said. Her voice came out fiercer than she intended, but Lyric just smiled sadly. We fought so hard to save Mama, Lyric said. We've traveled across the world. How can we give up now? I'm surprised by you, Rue. You've always been the risk-taker. And you've always been the cautious one. Runa smiled suddenly, her lips moving as if they had a mind of their own. What's happened to us, Lai? Forced maturity? They grinned at each other, and for a moment it felt like they were home again. Runa clung to the feeling. In that moment, she wanted to go back. She wanted to go home and shut the door against the world until it was just her and Lyric again. Life hadn't been simple and uncomplicated in Alay's Hollow. It had been challenging and hard, but Runa had understood it. She'd known who and what to trust. For what it's worth, I don't think we need to die for the ritual to succeed, Lyric said. If the old ones stayed behind so they could return if we need them, why would they require someone's death to do so? Unless they didn't create the ritual themselves, Runa said. What if the spell's purpose is to force the dragons to obey the summoner, who, if I'm not mistaken, will be Lenadara? Lyric shook her head, setting aside the half-eaten plate of food. The Aenarin's entire society is based on the sanctity of life. They seek to protect it. There's a problem in that, Runa said. Protection is subjective. Mother, for instance, thought she was protecting us when she abandoned us as children. Obviously, we disagree with her choice. In our eyes, she wasn't protecting us. Lyric sighed and rubbed her fingers over her face. I feel like we could discuss this for hours and still have doubts. We have to choose whether to trust Lenadar or not, and if we trust Elladan's judgment in bringing us here. Lyric sighed again and dropped her chin into her hands. He was angry with her, though, accused her of manipulating us. Did he know about the ritual? I wish Mama would arrive so we can ask what she thinks about it. You heard Elladan, Runa said. She didn't want us to come here at all. To keep us out of the war. I don't think she knew about the ritual. If she knew the taint was spreading and that we could eliminate it. Lyric? A man's voice called from outside. Are you there? Lyric's head jerked towards the door, and she stood, hands rising with anticipation. Kel, come in, she called. Kel pushed through the vines in the doorway, smiling tiredly. He looked haggard and pale. There were dark shadows under his eyes, but the blood was gone, as was the sightless stare from before. Lyric rushed at him, her hands flying around his neck. Kel caught her, staggering slightly, then pulled her into him. They clung to each other like they'd been parted for days and not hours. Kel's eyes closed, and he rested his cheek against Lyric's hair. Runa shifted uncomfortably, feeling as if she was witnessing a private moment. She considered leaving, giving them privacy, and then was irritated by the thought. If they wanted to be alone, they could leave. Runa reached for another vegetable from Lyric's plate and took a savage bite, barely registering its taste. I'm sorry, Kel said, as Lyric pulled away to look at him. Lyric shook her head. It's not your fault. You needed me, and... Kel, we're fine, Lyric said. We're all right. I've been worried about you. How are you? I'm all right now, I think, Kel said. I guess I lost consciousness for a while. The pain was excruciating. When the High Priestess mentioned King Rakarn, he paused, a muscle flexing in his cheek. It was like there was a door in my mind. I could feel it, knew that the memories of what happened that day lay beyond it. I've always stepped away from it before, listened to the tightening of the spell around my neck, but I wanted to understand. Will it break you again if we tell you what we learned? Runa asked bluntly. Lyric gave her an annoyed look over her shoulder. No, I don't think so, Kel's lips curved. I'll avoid opening any mental doors. We saw our father, Lyric said. Kel looked at her, his eyes widening with surprise. Your father? Yes, he was... Rabid, like an animal, Runa interrupted. She raised an eyebrow at another irritated look from her sister. It sounded terrible, yes, but how else could you describe the state of him? Mama was right. Our grandfather performed the ritual in Thenda, Lyric said carefully, and he used our father to power it. When Again fought against it, against Rakarn, the ritual collapsed and the taint was released or created. Lenadar doesn't know for sure. Our father is like one of those creatures now, on the shore but different, still human. Lenadar said he's been fighting the effects and only now succumbed to it. He didn't recognize us. Kel ran his hand across Lyric's back. I'm sorry. Runa watched him and noticed a muscle twitching along Kel's brow. She eyed the tattoo around his throat, but it didn't writhe like before. Lyric thinks we should perform the ritual again, she said. Kel's eyes widened, and he pushed Lyric back to stare into her face. You want to what? He demanded. The Mother Tree told the Ionarans that dragon fire will destroy the taint, Lyric said. Ah, yeah, the tree. Kel's voice was flat. Yes. The Mother Tree doesn't speak, Kel said, looking between Lyric and Runa. Runa pursed her lips. Apparently it does. Lyric gave Kel a concerned look. You knew that, Kel. Lenadar said the tree spoke to her while you were there. He blinked, confusion crossing his face like a man just now realizing he was drowning. I'm sorry, it was hard to focus. I felt... He shook his head. You're right, I remember. I just never heard... Well, I've personally never been here before. Kel moved his hands up onto Lyric's shoulders. But even if the tree does speak to them, the ritual destroyed my home, Lyric. It killed my parents and nearly killed your father. How can you even consider trying it? We'd be willing participants, Lyric said. We'd ask the old ones for help, guidance. It'd be like your story, Kel, the one you sang on the beach. Though distant and sleeping, they'll return to preserve us. Isn't that what you said? Kel gave Lyric a helpless look. It's a story, Lyric, a legend. It could be someone's fantasy or interpretation of something that happened. We don't know if the dragons are waiting for us or if they'd want to help us. He shifted his hands to Lyric's shoulders, eyes imploring. Don't forget, Lyric, that the old ones were not always charitable and kind. They were fierce and dangerous. They warred with the Seven over who should rule Aerith after the Trinity left us. They killed just as many humans as they saved. Yes, but after the Demon War, they stayed when the Seven left, Lyric said. She put her hand on Kel's wrist. The old ones helped us recover and rebuild. They mediated disputes, and when they left Aerith to us, they first created the Council. Whether or not they were sometimes terrible, they didn't want Aerith to die. They'll want to help. I know it. She's nothing if not idealistic, Runa said when Kel looked at her. You should have learned by now that Lyric will try to save everyone she meets. Lyric, please don't do this. Kel framed Lyric's face with his hands. It could kill you, or worse. I don't think I could survive if I lost you. It was touching the way Kel pleaded with Lyric, heartbreaking and painfully sad. There was a desperateness in his eyes that even Runa could see. You're being selfish, Runa said. She wasn't entirely speaking to Kel when she said it. I don't care. Kel didn't yell at Runa, just tightened his hands on Lyric's face. Lyric, please, if you're wrong and it doesn't work, or if it does, but the old ones are displeased. I understand your concerns, Lyric said, but we're in a position to ensure no one else has to die from the taint. We should do it. Runa felt a shiver of excitement as her words hung in the air. Maybe they'd fail, but maybe taking this risk and returning the dragons would preserve the world. If they walked away, what good was stopping the war, earning their freedom, if death waited at the end? I still think we should wait for Mother, but if she doesn't have a better solution... Lyric pulled free from Kel's hands and looked at her, surprise crossing her face. What changed your mind? I hadn't decided against it, Runa said, but I didn't want to rush to make a decision. We can't know for sure if we can trust Lenadara's word. We can't verify what she says, what she claims Aya has told her. But Eladin trusts her, and Mother trusts him, and if the taint has genuinely spread across the entire continent, then it might be weeks or even days before more cities are threatened. Venda could be the beginning. Can you imagine what would happen if Alay's Hollow falls to the taint? Or somewhere bigger, like Rathgar's Hold or Corsicania? Can you imagine the number of dead and infected? We barely survived a handful of the creatures on the shore. What if hundreds descended on a village? Though it feels arrogant and ridiculous to think we can do something about it, us of all people, I'd regret not trying. Your ancestors, Kel said, his voice hoarse. Have they shared no words of caution? No, Runa said, thinking of Eleanor's words about Lyric. Gandara has been distracted since we came here, Lyric said. I'm not sure what's wrong with her, but it's as if her mind is constantly wandering. I haven't been able to make much sense of her. I thought she was gone, but she's been muttering in my mind since we spoke with Lenadara. Maybe that's a sign to... I know you're worried, Kel, Lyric said. I am too, but I feel like I can actually do something. With the war, I didn't see where I'd fit. I don't know anything about negotiating peace, but this... If the old ones return, if they help us, we can save millions of people. We can save our father. I can save you, remove your silencing. We can stop the war. I know we shouldn't rush into this, decide too quickly, so we will wait to talk to our mother, but I feel this is right. Kel groaned and buried his face in Lyric's hair. Runa looked away, crossing her arms. There was a certainty in Lyric's face that she envied, a passion she wished she could feel. Lyric? Runa? Captain Eladin stepped inside, his face grave. His eyes flicked to Kel and Lyric, who'd pulled apart as he entered with Laerdy. Sashala and Taith stopped in the entrance, watching something outside. I've heard from Herlin, Eldon said without preamble. Your mother's been taken. Taken? Lyric gasped, fisting a hand in Kel's vest. By King Rakarn. He was there when Herlin went to retrieve her from the inn. Herlin followed them to Rathgar's Hold. How is she? Runa asked. Worry sucked the heat from her chest, and she crossed her arms, hands against her sides. She was unconscious when he saw her, but alive. Eladin's eyes deepened with sympathy. I'm sorry we didn't reach her in time. He won't hurt her, Lyric said, looking at Runa. Her eyes were worried but hopeful. She's his daughter, an heir. Runa took a breath, considering. Lyric was right. Rakarn would want to save her, help her. Whether or not he loved Elena didn't matter, and perhaps she was better off with him. If they went ahead with the ritual and it failed, then Ionar might be the least safe place to be. What could they do anyway? Stage a rescue? Assault the castle? The Ionarans had bows and were surely capable of protecting themselves, but would they attack Rendishar? Could they, even if they wanted to? They had no ships, no way to quickly travel long distances. Mother is probably safer away from us, Runa said slowly. Lyric nodded reluctantly, her fingers leaving creases in Kel's vest. Will Herlin keep an eye on her? Eladin nodded. I've asked him to stay nearby and send word when he catches a glimpse of her. She's in the castle. He'll keep us apprised of her condition and tell us when she wakes. Rakarn will probably try to show her off, quiet the whispers about her absence, which should allow Herlin to approach her. Thank you, Lyric said. She leaned against Kel, her arms wrapping around his waist. Kel held her tightly, his face a mask of misery and acceptance. Has Kaya agreed to leave us be for now? Runa asked, remembering the airship. Eladin nodded and braced his hands on his belt. She's agreed to wait. Does she know what Lenadara has asked us to do? Lyric asked. Why we're here? Eldon shook his head. She's been told you're communing with the Mother Tree at Lenadara's request. If she knew the delay was about the taint, she'd interfere. She thinks my clan is exaggerating the urgency to convince the Gale to abandon the war. He stroked his chin, his eyes conflicted. I know you hope to speak to your mother about the ritual. Forgive me for bringing you here, Eladin said. I didn't know Lenadara would ask you to do this. It was my suggestion, Lyric said. I only wanted to protect you and help my people, our people. Do you think we should do it? Runa asked, steadying Eladin's face. She wasn't sure if they could trust him to be impartial, but he hadn't done anything to betray them yet. Eladin scrubbed a hand across his jaw. Dendashara will kill me for this. You'd have them risk their lives, Kel said, strain hollowing his face. Eladin barked a harsh laugh. If you could save your father or Lyric or someone you love, wouldn't you do anything? If you knew the world was ending. This is not their responsibility, Kel snapped. They should not. Lyric put a hand on his chest and he cut off, looking down at her. Anger at Kel's tone had begun to bubble beneath Runa's skin, and she clenched her fist. She wanted to burn something, set it on fire. Slowly, pushing down her annoyance, Runa relaxed her hand and looked at her sister's face. I think we should try the ritual, Lyric said, but only if you agree. Runa looked at Laerdy, standing like a silent mountain behind their uncle. He seemed to have drawn inward, his eyes masked. She looked at the others. Sishala shifted restlessly, toying with a knife in one hand, and Taith had lost his smile. They were worried. What would happen if the dragons responded? Would Sereth come with the three? What would the Sereni do when faced with their god? And me? Am I ready? Yes, Runa said. She gave her sister a fierce nod. I will not be afraid. And I feel like I keep stopping at really exciting parts, but that was 2 chapters and we're about the time that I usually stop anyway. So yeah, we will continue with chapter 27 next time. Getting really close. Yeah, I don't know. I guess I won't ramble on about random stuff. So I hope that you have a good weekend. It already feels so much like fall here. Our weather, I guess here I'm rambling, but we had like a really late spring, early summer, and now suddenly it already feels like fall. Anyway, so yeah, and school is starting soon and all of that stuff. So anyway, yeah, I thank you for listening as always. I hope you're enjoying the story, and yeah, all right. Well, I will see you next time. Thanks again.